Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:27. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. Genesis 1:31. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. Genesis 2:7. Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. Genesis 2:9. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Genesis 2:16-17. And the Lord God commanded the man, "You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it you will certainly die." Genesis 3:1. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. Genesis 3:6. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. Genesis 3:7. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. Genesis 3:24. After he drove the man out, he placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden cherubim and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life.
Genesis 4:2. Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. Genesis 4:3-4. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord, and Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. Genesis 4:5. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Genesis 4:8. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Genesis 4:9. Then the Lord said to Cain,
"Where is your brother Abel?"
"I don't know,"
he replied.
"Am I my brother's keeper?"
Genesis 4:10. The Lord said,
"What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground."
Genesis 4:11-12.
Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth.
Genesis 4:16. So Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden.
Genesis 6:5-6. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth. His heart was deeply troubled, and he regretted that he had made human beings. Genesis 6:8-14. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood, make rooms in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out. Genesis 6:22. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Genesis 7:9. Male and female of every kind of animal entered the ark just as God had commanded Noah. Genesis 7:11-12. On that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Genesis 7:18-21. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. Every living thing that moved on land perished. Genesis 8:1-4. But God remembered Noah, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. The ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Genesis 9:16-17. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures. This is the sign of the covenant I have established. Genesis 11:1-2. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. Genesis 11:4. Then they said,
"Come, let us build ourselves a city, with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves." Otherwise we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth.
Genesis 11:5. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. Genesis 11:6-7. The Lord said,
If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them.
Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. Genesis 11:8. So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. Genesis 11:9. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Genesis 12:1. The Lord had said to Abram,
Go from your country, your people and your father's household to the land I will show you.
Genesis 12:2-3.
I will make you into a great nation and I will bless you. I will make your name great and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you.
Genesis 12:4. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. Genesis 12:5. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Genesis 12:7. The Lord appeared to Abram and said,
To your offspring I will give this land.
So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Genesis 12:9. Then Abram set out and continued toward the Negev. Genesis 13:6. So that the land could not support both of them dwelling together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. Genesis 13:9.
Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right.
Genesis 13:10. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord. Genesis 13:11. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. Genesis 13:15.
For all the land that you see I will give to you and to your offspring forever.
Genesis 13:18. So Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. Genesis 14:12. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. Genesis 14:13. A man who had escaped came and reported this to Abram the Hebrew. Now Abram was living near the great trees of Mamre the Amorite. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. Genesis 14:15. During the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. Genesis 14:16. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with the women and the other people. Genesis 14:18-19. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abram, saying,
Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth.
Genesis 14:20.
And praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand.
Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. Genesis 15:1. After these things the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision.
Fear not, Abram, I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great.
Genesis 15:2. But Abram said,
O Lord God, what will you give me? For I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus.
Genesis 15:5. And he brought him outside and said,
Look toward heaven and number the stars, if you are able to number them.
Then he said to him,
So shall your offspring be.
Genesis 15:9. He said to him,
Bring me a heifer 3 years old, a female goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon.
Genesis 15:10. And he brought him all these, cut them in half, and laid each half over against the other. Genesis 15:11. And when birds of prey came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Genesis 15:13. Then the Lord said to Abram,
Know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years.
Genesis 15:14.
But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions.
Genesis 15:17. When the sun had gone down and it was dark, behold, a smoking firepot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. Genesis 15:18. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying,
To your offspring I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates.
Genesis 16:1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar. Genesis 16:2. And Sarai said to Abram,
Behold now, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go into my servant. It may be that I shall obtain children by her.
And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. Genesis 16:4. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. Genesis 16:6. But Abram said to Sarai,
Behold, your servant is in your power, do to her as you please.
Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. Genesis 16:7. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. Genesis 16:9. The angel of the Lord said to her,
Return to your mistress and submit to her.
Genesis 16:11. And the angel of the Lord said to her,
Behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction.
Genesis 16:15. And Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Genesis 17:1. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said,
I am God Almighty, walk before me and be blameless.
Genesis 17:3. Then Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, Genesis 17:4-5.
As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of many nations.
Genesis 17:7.
And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your offspring after you.
Genesis 17:10-11.
This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you.
Genesis 17:15-16. And God said to Abraham,
As for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her.
Genesis 17:19. God said,
No, but Sarah your wife shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him.
Genesis 17:23. Then Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all those born in his house or bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that very day, as God had said to him. Genesis 18:1-3. And the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the earth and said,
O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant.
Genesis 18:10. The Lord said,
I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife shall have a son.
And Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him. Genesis 18:12. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying,
After I am worn out, and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure?
Genesis 18:14.
Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you, about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son.
Genesis 18:20. Then the Lord said,
Because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave.
Genesis 18:23. Then Abraham drew near and said,
Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked?
Genesis 18:32. Then he said,
Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak again but this once. Suppose 10 are found there.
He answered,
For the sake of 10 I will not destroy it.
Genesis 19:1. The two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth. Genesis 19:3. But he pressed them strongly, so they turned aside to him and entered his house, and he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Genesis 19:5. And they called to Lot.
Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them.
Genesis 19:6-7. Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said,
I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly.
Genesis 19:10-11. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out groping for the door. Genesis 19:17. And as they brought them out, one said,
Escape for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the hills, lest you be swept away.
Genesis 19:24-25. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities, and all the valley, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and what grew on the ground. Genesis 19:26. But Lot's wife, behind him, looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Genesis 19:30. Now Lot went up out of Zoar and lived in the hills with his 2 daughters, for he was afraid to live in Zoar. So he lived in a cave with his 2 daughters. Genesis 19:31-32. And the firstborn said to the younger,
Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come in to us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve offspring from our father.
Genesis 19:33. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Genesis 19:34. The next day the firstborn said to the younger,
Behold, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight also. Then you go in and lie with him, that we may preserve offspring from our father.
Genesis 19:35. So they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Genesis 19:37. The firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. Genesis 19:38. The younger also bore a son and called his name Ben-Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites to this day. Genesis 21. Now Abraham moved on from there into the region of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur. For a while he stayed in Gerar. Genesis 22. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife,
She is my sister.
And Abimelech king of Gerar sent and took Sarah. Genesis 23. But God came to Abimelech in a dream one night and said to him,
You are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is a married woman.
Genesis 25.
Did he not say to me, She is my sister? And didn't she also say, He is my brother? I have done this with a clear conscience and clean hands.
Genesis 26. Then God said to him in the dream,
Yes, I know you did this with a clear conscience, and so I have kept you from sinning against me. That is why I did not let you touch her.
Genesis 29. Then Abimelech called Abraham in and said,
What have you done to us? How have I wronged you that you have brought such great guilt upon me and my kingdom?
Genesis 20:10. And Abimelech asked Abraham,
What was your reason for doing this?
Genesis 20:11. Abraham replied,
I said to myself, There is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife.
Genesis 20:12.
Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother, and she became my wife.
Genesis 20:14. Then Abimelech brought sheep and cattle and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham, and he returned Sarah his wife to him. Genesis 20:16. To Sarah he said,
I am giving your brother 1,000 shekels of silver. This is to cover the offense against you before all who are with you. You are completely vindicated.
Genesis 20:17. Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife and his female slaves so they could have children again. Genesis 20:18. For the Lord had kept all the women in Abimelech's household from conceiving because of Abraham's wife Sarah. Genesis 21:1. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. Genesis 21:2. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. Genesis 21:3. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. Genesis 21:6. And Sarah said,
God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me.
Genesis 21:9. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham laughing. Genesis 21:10. So she said to Abraham,
Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac.
Genesis 21:11. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. Genesis 21:12. God said to Abraham,
Be not displeased because of the boy, and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you. For through Isaac shall your offspring be named.
Genesis 21:13.
And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring.
Genesis 21:14. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, along with the child, and sent her away. Genesis 21:15. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Genesis 21:16. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bowshot, for she said,
Let me not look on the death of the child.
And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. Genesis 21:17. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her,
What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is.
Genesis 21:18.
Up, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation.
Genesis 21:19. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. Genesis 21:20. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. Genesis 21:21. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Genesis 21:22-23. Abimelech said to Abraham,
God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me or with my descendants.
Genesis 21:24. And Abraham said,
I will swear.
Genesis 21:25. When Abraham reproved Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized. Genesis 21:27. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a covenant. Genesis 21:31. Therefore that place was called Beersheba, because there both of them swore an oath. Genesis 21:33. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. Genesis 21:34. And Abraham sojourned many days in the land of the Philistines. Genesis 22:1. After these things God tested Abraham and said to him,
Abraham.
And he said,
Here I am.
Genesis 22:2. He said,
Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you.
Genesis 22:3. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took two of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. Genesis 22:6. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both of them together. Genesis 22:7. And Isaac said to his father Abraham,
My father.
And he said,
Here I am, my son.
He said,
Behold, the fire and the wood, But where is the lamb for a burnt offering?
Genesis 22:8. Abraham said,
God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son.
so they went both of them together. Genesis 22:9. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Genesis 22:10. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. Genesis 22:11. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said,
Abraham, Abraham.
and he said,
Here I am.
Genesis 22:12. He said,
Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me.
Genesis 22:13. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram, caught in a thicket by his horns. Genesis 22:14. So Abraham called the name of that place,
The Lord will provide.
as it is said to this day, on the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. Genesis 22:15. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven. Genesis 22:16-18.
By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice.
Genesis 23:1. Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. Genesis 23:2. And Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron in the land of Canaan, and Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Genesis 23:3-4. And Abraham rose up from before his dead and said to the Hittites,
I am a sojourner and foreigner among you. Give me property among you for a burying place, that I may bury my dead out of my sight.
Genesis 23:5-6. The Hittites answered Abraham,
Hear us, my Lord. You are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will withhold from you his tomb to hinder you from burying your dead.
Genesis 23:7-9. Abraham rose and bowed to the Hittites and said,
Ask Ephron the son of Sohar for me, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah. For the full price let him give it to me.
Genesis 23:11.
No, my Lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of the sons of my people I give it to you. Bury your dead.
Genesis 23:15.
My Lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver, what is that between you and me? Bury your dead.
Genesis 23:17-18. So the field of Ephron in Machpelah was made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites. Genesis 23:19. After this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah east of Mamre, that is Hebron in the land of Canaan. Genesis 23:20. The field and the cave that is in it were made over to Abraham as property for a burying place by the Hittites. Genesis 24:1. Now Abraham was old, well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. Genesis 24:2-4. And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he had,
Put your hand under my thigh, that I may make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and God of the earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell, but will go to my country and to my kindred, and take a wife for my son Isaac.
Genesis 24:10. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of choice gifts from his master. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia to the city of Nahor. Genesis 24:12, and he said,
O Lord, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham.
Genesis 24:13-14.
Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the young woman to whom I shall say, Please let down your jar that I may drink. And who shall say, Drink, and I will water your camels, let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master.
Genesis 24:15. Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah came out with her water jar on her shoulder. Genesis 24:17-19. Then the servant ran to meet her and said,
Please give me a little water to drink from your jar.
She said,
Drink, my lord.
and she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said,
I will draw water for your camels also, until they have finished drinking.
Genesis 24:26-27. The man bowed his head and worshipped the Lord and said,
Blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham.
Genesis 24:28-29. Then the young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. Laban ran out toward the man to the spring. Genesis 24:50-51. Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said,
The thing has come from the Lord. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son as the Lord has spoken.
Genesis 24:62-64. Now Isaac had returned from Beer Lahai Roi and was dwelling in the Negeb. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening. And he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel. Genesis 24:67. Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah his mother, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Genesis 25:7. These are the days of the years of Abraham's life, 175 years. Genesis 25:8. Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people. Genesis 25:9. Isaac and Ishmael his sons buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron the son of Zohar the Hittite east of Mamre. Genesis 25:21. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah his wife conceived. Genesis 25:22. The children struggled together within her, and she said,
If it is thus, why is this happening to me?
So she went to inquire of the Lord. Genesis 25:23. And the Lord said to her,
2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger.
Genesis 25:25. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak, so they called his name Esau. Genesis 25:26. Afterward his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. Genesis 25:27. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man, dwelling in tents. Genesis 25:28. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Genesis 25:29. Once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. Genesis 25:30. And Esau said to Jacob,
Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted.
Therefore his name was called Edom. Genesis 25:31. Jacob said,
Sell me your birthright now.
Genesis 25:32. Esau said,
I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?
Genesis 25:33. Jacob said,
Swear to me now.
So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Genesis 25:34. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Genesis 26:1. Now there was a famine in the land, besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham, and Isaac went to Abimelech king of the Philistines in Gerar. Genesis 26:2-3. And the Lord appeared to him and said,
Do not go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you, and will bless you.
Genesis 26:6. So Isaac settled in Gerar. Genesis 26:7. When the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said,
She is my sister.
For he feared to say, my wife, thinking, lest the men of the place should kill me because of Rebekah, because she was attractive in appearance. Genesis 26:8. When he had been there a long time, Abimelech king of the Philistines looked out of a window and saw Isaac laughing with Rebekah his wife. Genesis 26:9. So Abimelech called Isaac and said,
Behold, she is your wife. How then could you say, She is my sister?
Isaac said to him,
Because I thought, lest I die because of her.
Genesis 26:12. And Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. The Lord blessed him. Genesis 26:14-15. He had possessions of flocks and herds and many servants, so that the Philistines envied him. Now the Philistines had stopped and filled with earth all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father. Genesis 26:16. And Abimelech said to Isaac,
Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we.
Genesis 26:17. So Isaac departed from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar and settled there. Genesis 26:19. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found there a well of spring water. Genesis 26:20. The herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying,
The water is ours.
So he called the name of the well Esek, because they contended with him. Genesis 26:21. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that also, so he called its name Sitnah. Genesis 26:22. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it, so he called its name Rehoboth, saying,
For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land.
Genesis 26:23. From there he went up to Beersheba. Genesis 26:24. And the Lord appeared to him the same night and said,
I am the God of Abraham your father. Fear not, for I am with you, and will bless you, and multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake.
Genesis 26:25. So he built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent there, and there Isaac's servants dug a well. Genesis 27:1. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau his older son and said to him,
My son.
Genesis 27:2. He said,
Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death.
Genesis 27:3-4.
Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die.
Genesis 27:5. Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Genesis 27:6-7, Rebekah said to her son Jacob,
I heard your father speak to your brother Esau, Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food, that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die.
Genesis 27:8-10.
Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, so that I may prepare them as delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies.
Genesis 27:16-17. And the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. And she put the delicious food and the bread, which she had prepared, into the hand of her son Jacob. Genesis 27:18-19. So he went into his father and said,
My father.
And he said,
Here I am. Who are you, my son?
Jacob said to his father,
I am Esau your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me.
Genesis 27:21-22. Then Isaac said to Jacob,
Please come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not.
So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said,
The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau.
Genesis 27:25. Then he said,
Bring it near to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you.
So he brought it near to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Genesis 27:26-27. Then his father Isaac said to him,
Come near and kiss me, my son.
So he came near and kissed him. And Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him and said,
See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed.
Genesis 27:28-29.
May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you.
Genesis 27:30-31. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father,
Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me.
Genesis 27:32-33. His father Isaac said to him,
Who are you?
He answered,
I am your son, your firstborn Esau.
Then Isaac trembled very violently and said,
Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him, yes, and he shall be blessed.
Genesis 27:35-36. But he said,
Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing.
Esau said,
Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he's taken away my blessing.
Genesis 27:37-38. Isaac answered and said to Esau,
Behold, I have made him lord over you, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants, and with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?
Esau said to his father,
Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, my father.
And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Genesis 27:39-40. Then Isaac his father answered and said to him,
Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless you shall break his yoke from your neck.
Genesis 27:41. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him, and Esau said to himself,
The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob.
Genesis 27:42-43. But the words of Esau her older son were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob her younger son and said to him,
Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban my brother in Haran.
Genesis 27:44-45.
Stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day?
Genesis 28:1-2. Then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and directed him,
You must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. Arise, go to Padan Aram to the house of Bethuel your mother's father, and take as your wife from there one of the daughters of Laban your mother's brother.
Genesis 28:3.
God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may become a company of peoples.
Genesis 28:8-9. So when Esau saw that the Canaanite women did not please Isaac his father, Esau went to Ishmael and took as his wife, besides the wives he had, Mahalath the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebaioth. Genesis 28:10-12. Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran, and he came to a certain place and stayed there that night, because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Genesis 28:13-15. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said,
I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you.
Genesis 28:16-17. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said,
Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it.
And he was afraid and said,
How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven.
Genesis 28:18-19. So early in the morning Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head, and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. He called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of the city was Luz at the first. Genesis 28:22. Then Jacob made a vow, saying,
If God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone, which I have set up for a pillar, shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you.
Genesis 29:13. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Jacob told Laban all these things. Genesis 29:14-15. And Laban said to him,
Surely you are my bone and my flesh.
And he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob,
Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?
Genesis 29:16-17. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. Genesis 29:18-19. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said,
I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel.
Laban said,
It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man. Stay with me.
Genesis 29:20-21. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban,
Give me my wife that I may go into her, for my time is completed.
Genesis 29:22. So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. Genesis 29:23-24. But in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his female servant Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her servant. Genesis 29:25. And in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban,
What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?
Genesis 29:26-27. Laban said,
It is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years.
Genesis 29:28-29. Jacob did so and completed her week. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. Genesis 29:30. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and served Laban for another 7 years. Genesis 29:31. When the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Genesis 29:32. And Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said,
Because the Lord has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me.
Genesis 29:33. She conceived again and bore a son, and said,
Because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also.
And she called his name Simeon. Genesis 29:34. Again she conceived and bore a son, and said,
Now this time my husband will be attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons.
Therefore his name was called Levi. Genesis 29:35. And she conceived again and bore a son, and said,
This time I will praise the Lord.
Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she ceased bearing. Genesis 31:2. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob,
Give me children, or I shall die.
Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said,
Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?
Genesis 30:3-4. Then she said,
Here is my servant Bilhah. Go into her, so that she may give birth on my behalf, that even I may have children through her.
So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her. Genesis 35:6. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said,
God has judged me, and has also heard my voice, and given me a son.
Therefore she called his name Dan. Genesis 37:8. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said,
With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and have prevailed.
So she called his name Naphtali. Genesis 39 through 13. When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Then Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said,
"Good fortune has come."
So she called his name Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said,
"Happy am I, for women have called me happy."
So she called his name Asher. Genesis 30:14 through 16. In the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah,
"Please give me some of your son's mandrakes."
But she said to her,
"Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?"
Rachel said,
"Then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes."
When Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said,
"You must come into me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes."
So he lay with her that night. Genesis 30:17 through 21. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said,
"God has given me my wages because I gave my servant to my husband."
So she called his name Issachar. And Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said,
"God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will honor me because I have borne him 6 sons."
So she called his name Zebulun. Afterwards she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. Genesis 30:22 through 24. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said,
"God has taken away my reproach."
And she called his name Joseph, saying,
"May the Lord add to me another son."
Genesis 31:1 through 2. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying,
Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has gained all this wealth.
And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Genesis 31:3. Then the Lord said to Jacob,
Return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you.
Genesis 31:17 through 19. So Jacob arose and set his sons and his wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Paddan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. Genesis 31:20. And Jacob tricked Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he intended to flee. Genesis 31:22 through 24. When it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsman with him and pursued him for 7 days, and followed close after him into the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said to him,
Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.
Genesis 31:25 through 26. And Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob,
What have you done, that you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword?
Genesis 31:29 through 30.
It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And now you have gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house, but why did you steal my gods?
Genesis 31:33 through 35. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the 2 female servants. But he did not find them, and he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about the tent but did not find them. And she said to her father,
Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me.
So he searched but did not find the household gods. Genesis 31:36 through 37. Then Jacob became angry and berated Laban. Jacob said to Laban,
What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? For you have felt through all my goods. What have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two.
Genesis 31:43 through 45. Then Laban answered and said to Jacob,
The daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day for these my daughters or for their children whom they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me.
So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. Genesis 31:47. Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Galid. Genesis 32, 1 through 3. And Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said,
This is God's host.
And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother unto the land of Seir, the country of Edom. Genesis 32, 6 through 7. And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying,
We came to thy brother Esau, and also he cometh to meet thee, and 400 men with him.
Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that was with him, and the flocks, and herds, and the camels, into 2 bands. Genesis 32, 9 through 13. And Jacob said,
O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord which saidst unto me, Return unto thy country and to thy kindred, and I will deal well with thee. I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies, and of all the truth which thou hast shown unto thy servant. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become 2 bands. Deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he will come and smite me, and the mother with the children. And thou saidst, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude.
And he lodged there that same night, and took of that which came to his hand a present for Esau his brother. Genesis 32, 21 through 22. So went the present over before him, and himself lodged that night in the company. And he rose up that night, and took his 2 wives, and his 2 women servants, and his 11 sons, and passed over the ford Jabbok. Genesis 32, 24 through 25. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint, as he wrestled with him. Genesis 32, 26 through 27. And he said,
Let me go, for the day breaketh.
And he said,
I will not let thee go, except thou bless me.
And he said unto him,
What is thy name?
And he said,
Jacob.
Genesis 32, 28 through 30. And he said,
Thy name shall be called no more Jacob but Israel, for as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed.
And Jacob asked him and said,
Tell me, I pray thee thy name.
And he said,
Wherefore is it that thou dost ask after my name?
And he blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel.
For I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved.
Genesis 32, 31 through 32. And as he passed over Peniel, the sun rose upon him, and he halted upon his thigh. Therefore the children of Israel eat not of the sinew which shrank, which is upon the hollow of the thigh, unto this day, because he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh in the sinew that shrank. Genesis 33, 1 through 3. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 female servants. He put the female servants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. Genesis 33, 4 through 7. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children.
Who are these with you?
He asked. Jacob answered,
They are the children God has graciously given your servant.
Then the female servants and their children approached and bowed down. Next Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. Genesis 33, 8 through 11. Esau asked,
What's the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met?
To find favor in your eyes, my lord,
he said. But Esau said,
I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself.
No, please,
said Jacob.
If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God. Now that you have received me favorably, please accept the present that was brought to you. For God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need.
And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. Genesis 33, 12 through 15. Then Esau said,
Let us be on our way. I'll accompany you.
But Jacob said to him,
My Lord knows that the children are tender and that I must care for the ewes and cows that are nursing their young. If they are driven hard just one day, all the animals will die. So let my Lord go on ahead of his servant, while I move along slowly at the pace of the flocks and herds before me and the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir.
Esau said,
Then let me leave some of my men with you.
But why do that?
Jacob asked.
Just let me find favor in the eyes of my Lord.
Genesis 33, 16 through 20. So that day Esau started on his way back to Seir. Jacob, however, went to Succoth, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. That is why the place is called Sukkot. After Jacob came from Paddan Aram, he arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan and camped within sight of the city. For 100 pieces of silver he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent. There he set up an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. Genesis 34:1-2. Now Dinah, the daughter Leah had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. When Shechem son of Hamor the Hivite, the ruler of that area, saw her, he took her and defiled her. Genesis 34:3-6. His heart was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. And Shechem said to his father Hamor,
"Get me this girl as my wife."
When Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the fields with his livestock, so he did nothing about it until they came home. Then Shechem's father Hamor went out to talk with Jacob. Genesis 34:8. But Hamor said to them,
"My son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife."
Genesis 34:13-16. Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to them,
"We can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who has not been circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. We will enter into an agreement with you on one condition only, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. Then we will give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves, and will settle among you and become one people with you."
Genesis 34:18. Their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. Genesis 34:20-22. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city to speak to the men of their city.
"These men are friendly toward us,"
he said.
"Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters and they can marry ours. But the men will agree to live with us as one people only on the condition that our males be circumcised, as they themselves are."
Genesis 34:24-27. All the men who went out of the city gate agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. Genesis 34:30-31. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi,
"You have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and Perizzites, the people living in this land. We are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed."
But they replied,
"Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute?"
Genesis 35:1-3. Then God said to Jacob,
"Go up to Bethel and settle there, and build an altar there to God who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau."
So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him,
"Get rid of the foreign gods you have with you, and purify yourselves and change your clothes. Then come, let us go up to Bethel, where I will build an altar to God, who answered me in the day of my distress and who has been with me wherever I have gone."
Genesis 35:4-7. So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods they had and the rings in their ears, and Jacob buried them under the oak at Shechem. Then they set out, and the terror of God fell on the towns all around them so that no one pursued them. Jacob and all the people with him came to Luz, that is, Bethel, in the land of Canaan. There he built an altar, and he called the place El Bethel because it was there that God revealed himself to him when he was fleeing from his brother. Genesis 35:9-12. After Jacob returned from Paddan Aram, God appeared to him again and blessed him. God said to him,
"Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel."
So he named him Israel. And God said to him,
"I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will be among your descendants. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac I also give to you, and I will give this land to your descendants after you."
Genesis 35:13-15. Then God went up from him at the place where he had talked with him. Jacob set up a stone pillar at the place where God had talked with him, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured oil on it. Jacob called the place where God had talked with him Bethel. Genesis 35:16-18. Then they moved on from Bethel. While they were still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth and had great difficulty, and as she was having great difficulty in childbirth, the midwife said to her,
"Don't despair, for you have another son."
As she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, but his father named him Benjamin. Genesis 35:19-20. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Over her tomb Jacob set up a pillar, and to this day that pillar marks Rachel's tomb. Genesis 35:27-29. Jacob came home to his father Isaac in Mamre, near Kiriath Arba, that is, Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. Isaac lived 180 years. Then he breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of years. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Genesis 37:1-4. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah, and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Genesis 37:5-8. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them,
Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it.
His brothers said to him,
Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?
And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Genesis 37:9-11. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers.
Listen,
he said,
I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me.
When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said,
What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?
His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Genesis 37:12-17. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph,
As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I am going to send you to them.
Very well,
he replied. So he said to him,
Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me.
Then he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him,
What are you looking for?
He replied,
I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks?
They have moved on from here.
The man answered.
I heard them say, Let's go to Dothan.
So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. Genesis 37:18-22. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him.
Here comes that dreamer.
They said to each other,
Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams.
When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands.
Let's not take his life,
he said.
Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him.
Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. Genesis 37:23-25. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty, there was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Genesis 37:26-28. Judah said to his brothers,
What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood.
His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. Genesis 37:29-33. When Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said,
The boy isn't there. Where can I turn now?
Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. They took the ornate robe back to their father and said,
We found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe.
He recognized it and said,
It is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces.
Genesis 37:34-35. Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted.
No,
He said.
I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave.
So his father wept for him. Genesis 37:36. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. Genesis 38:1-5. At that time, Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with a man of Adullam named Hira. There Judah met the daughter of a Canaanite man named Shua. He married her and made love to her. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son who was named She conceived again and gave birth to a son and named him Onan. She gave birth to still another son and named him Shelah. It was at Chazib that she gave birth to him. Genesis 38:6-8. Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan,
Sleep with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty to her as a brother-in-law to raise up offspring for your brother.
Genesis 38:9-11. But Onan knew that the child would not be his, so whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground to keep from providing offspring for his brother. What he did was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death also. Judah then said to his daughter-in-law Tamar,
Live as a widow in your father's household until my son Shelah grows up.
For he thought, he may die too, just like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's household. Genesis 38:12-14. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. When Judah had recovered from his grief, he went up to Timnah to the men who were shearing his sheep, and his friend Hira the Adullamite went with him. When Tamar was told,
Your father-in-law is on his way to Timnah to shear his sheep,
she took off her widow's clothes, covered herself with a veil to disguise herself, and then sat down at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah, for she saw that, though Shelah had now grown up, she had not been given to him as his wife. Genesis 38:15-18. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. Not realizing that she was his daughter-in-law, he went over to her by the roadside and said,
Come now, let me sleep with you.
And what will you give me to sleep with you?
She asked.
I'll send you a young goat from my flock.
He said.
Will you give me something as a pledge until you send it?
She asked. He said,
What pledge should I give you?
Your seal and its cord, and the staff in your hand.
She answered. So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. Genesis 38:19-23. After she left, she took off her veil and put on her widow's clothes again. Meanwhile, Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adullamite in order to get his pledge back from the woman, but he did not find her. He asked the men who lived there,
Where is the shrine prostitute who was beside the road at Enaim?
There hasn't been any shrine prostitute here,
they said. So he went back to Judah and said,
I didn't find her. Besides, the men who lived there said, There hasn't been any shrine prostitute here.
Then Judah said,
Let her keep what she has, or we will become a laughingstock. After all, I did send her this young goat, but you didn't find her.
Genesis 38:24-26. About 3 months later, Judah was told,
Your daughter-in-law Tamar is guilty of prostitution, and as a result she is now pregnant.
Judah said,
Bring her out and have her burned to death.
As she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law.
I am pregnant by the man who owns these,
she said, and she added,
See if you recognize whose seal and cord and stuff these are.
Judah recognized them and said,
She is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah.
And he did not sleep with her again. Genesis 38:27-30. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand, so the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it on his wrist and said,
This one came out first.
But when he drew back his hand, his brother came out, and she said,
So this is how you have broken out.
And he was named Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his wrist, came out, and he was named Zerah. Genesis 39:1-3. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did. Genesis 39:6-10. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Now Joseph was well built and handsome, and after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said,
"Come to bed with me."
But he refused.
With me in charge,
He told her,
my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?
And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. Genesis 39:11-12. One day he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants was inside. She caught him by his cloak and said,
"Come to bed with me."
But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. Genesis 39:16-18. She kept his cloak beside her until his master came home. Then she told him this story.
"That Hebrew slave you brought us came to me to make sport of me. But as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house."
Genesis 39:19-23. When his master heard the story, his wife told him, saying, "This is how your slave treated me." He burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But while Joseph was there in the prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Genesis 41:3. Some time later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. Genesis 44:5. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Genesis 49:13. So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him,
"In my dream, I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. It budded, blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand."
This is what it means,
Joseph said to him.
"The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer."
Genesis 40:14.
"But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison."
Genesis 40:16-19. When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph,
"I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head."
This is what it means,
Joseph said.
"The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh."
Genesis 40:20-23. Now the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Genesis 41:1-4. When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile, when out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile and stood beside those on the riverbank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. Genesis 41:5-8. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. In the morning his mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Genesis 41:9-13. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh,
Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream.
Genesis 41:14-16. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph,
I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it.
I cannot do it.
Joseph replied to Pharaoh,
But God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires.
Genesis 41:25-27. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh,
The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean ugly cows that came up afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine.
Genesis 41:28-32.
It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon.
Genesis 41:38-41. So Pharaoh asked them,
Can we find anyone like this man? One in whom is the Spirit of God?
Then Pharaoh said to Joseph,
Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you.
So Pharaoh said to Joseph,
I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt.
Genesis 41:46-49. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Genesis 41:50-52. Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh and said,
It is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household.
The second son he named Ephraim and said,
It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering.
Genesis 41:53-57. The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians,
Go to Joseph and do what he tells you.
And all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. Genesis 42:1-3. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons,
Why do you just keep looking at each other? Go down there and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die.
Then 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. Genesis 42:6-8. Now Joseph was the governor of the land, the person who sold grain to all its people. When Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Genesis 42:9-11. Then he remembered his dreams about them and said to them,
You are spies! You have come to see where our land is unprotected!
But they replied,
No, my lord.
Your servants have come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men, not spies.
Genesis 42:18 through 20. On the third day, Joseph said to them,
Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison, while the rest of you go and take grain back for your starving households. But you must bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words may be verified, and that you may not die.
Genesis 42:25 through 26. Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to put each man's silver back in his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. After this was done for them, they loaded their grain on their donkeys and left. Genesis 42:35 through 36. As they were emptying their sacks, there in each man's sack was his pouch of silver. When they and their father saw the money pouches, they were frightened. Their father Jacob said to them,
You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me.
Genesis 43:1 through 2. Now the famine was still severe in the land. So when they had eaten all the grain they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them,
Go back and buy us a little more food.
Genesis 43:3 through 5. But Judah said to him,
The men solemnly warned us, You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother along with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. Because the man said to us, You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you.
Genesis 43:11 through 14. Then their father Israel said to them,
If it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bags and take them down to the man as a gift. A little balm and a little honey, some spices and myrrh, some pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double the amount of silver with you, for you must return the silver that's put back into the mouths of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also and go back to the man at once, and may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back with you. As for me, if I am bereaved.
Genesis 43:26 through 30. When Joseph came home, they presented to him the gifts they had brought into the house, and they bowed down before him to the ground. He asked them how they were, and then he said,
How is your aged father you told me about? Is he still living?
They replied,
Your servant, our father, is still alive and well.
And they bowed down, prostrating themselves before him. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked,
Is this your youngest brother? The one you told me about?
And he said,
God be gracious to you, my son.
Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there. Genesis 44:1 through 5. Now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house.
Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain.
And he did as Joseph said. As morning dawned, the men were sent on their way with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward,
Go after those men at once, and when you catch up with them, say to them, Why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this the cup my master drinks from and also uses for divination? This is a wicked thing you have done.
Genesis 44:6 through 9. When he caught up with them, he repeated these words to them. But they said to him,
Why does my lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found inside the mouths of our sacks. So why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my lord's slaves.
Genesis 44:11 through 13. Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. Then the steward proceeded to search, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this they tore their clothes. Then they all loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. Genesis 44:14 through 17. Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers came in, and they threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them,
"What is this you have done? Don't you know that a man like me can find things out by divination?"
What can we say to my lord?
Judah replied,
What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my lord's slaves. We ourselves, and the one who was found to have the cup.
But Joseph said,
"Far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you, go back to your father in peace."
Genesis 44:30 through 34.
So now, if the boy is not with us, when I go back to your servant my father, and if my father, whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, sees that the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow. Your servant guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, if I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before my father all my life. Now then, please let your servant remain here as my lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers.
Genesis 45:1 through 4. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out,
"Have everyone leave my presence."
So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers,
"I am Joseph. Is my father still living?"
But his brothers were not able to answer him, because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers,
"Come close to me."
When they had done so, he said,
"I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt."
Genesis 45:5 through 8.
And now, do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt.
Genesis 45:9 through 15.
Now hurry back to my father and say to him, "This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me. You, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute."
Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept. And Benjamin embraced him, weeping, and he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Afterward his brothers talked with him. Genesis 45:25 through 28. So they went up out of Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They told him,
Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is ruler of all Egypt.
Jacob was stunned. He did not believe them. But when they told him everything Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts Joseph had sent to carry him back, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said,
"I'm convinced my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die."
Genesis 46:1 through 4. So Israel set out with all that was his, and when he reached Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in a vision at night and said,
Jacob, Jacob.
Here I am.
He replied.
I am God, the God of your father.
He said,
Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again. And Joseph's own hand will close your eyes.
Genesis 46:5-7. Then Jacob left Beersheba, and Israel's sons took their father Jacob and their children and their wives in the carts that Pharaoh had sent to transport him. So Jacob and all his offspring went to Egypt, taking with them their livestock and the possessions they had acquired in Canaan. Jacob brought with him to Egypt his sons and grandsons and his daughters and granddaughters, all his offspring. Genesis 46:28-30. Now Jacob sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to get directions to Goshen. When they arrived in the region of Goshen, Joseph had his chariot made ready and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as Joseph appeared before him, he threw his arms around his father and wept for a long time. Israel said to Joseph,
Now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive.
Genesis 47:1-4. Joseph went and told Pharaoh,
My father and brothers, with their flocks and herds and everything they own, have come from the land of Canaan and are now in Goshen.
He chose 5 of his brothers and presented them before Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked the brothers,
What is your occupation?
They said to Pharaoh,
Your servants are shepherds, just as our fathers were. We have come to live here a while because the famine is severe in Canaan. Please let your servants settle in Goshen.
Genesis 47:5-6. Pharaoh said to Joseph,
Your father and your brothers have come to you, and the land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in Goshen.
Genesis 47:11-12. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers in Egypt and gave them property in the best part of the land, the district of Ramesses. Joseph also provided his father and brothers and all his father's household with food. Genesis 47:13-17. There was no food in the whole region because the famine was severe. Joseph collected all the money in Egypt and Canaan for grain. When the people's money was gone, they said,
Give us food.
Then Joseph said,
Bring your livestock.
So they brought their animals to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange. Genesis 47:18-20. When that year was over, they said,
Our money is gone and our livestock belongs to my Lord. Nothing is left but our bodies and our land.
Buy us and our land in exchange for food.
So Joseph bought all the land in Egypt for Pharaoh. Genesis 47:23-24. Joseph said to the people,
Now that I have bought you and your land for Pharaoh, here is seed for you so you can plant the ground. But when the crop comes in, give 1/5 of it to Pharaoh. The rest is yours for food.
Genesis 47:27-28. Now the Israelites settled in Egypt in the region of Goshen. They acquired property there and were fruitful and increased greatly in number. Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years, and his years were 147. Genesis 47:29-31. When the time drew near for Israel to die, he called for his son Joseph and said,
Do not bury me in Egypt, but when I rest with my fathers, carry me out of Egypt and bury me where they are buried.
Joseph swore to him, and Israel worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff. Genesis 48:1-4. Sometime later, Joseph was told,
Your father is ill.
So he took his 2 sons Manasseh and Ephraim along with him. When Jacob was told,
Your son Joseph has come to you.
he rallied his strength and sat up on the bed. Jacob said to Joseph,
God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and there he blessed me and said to me, I am going to make you fruitful and increase your numbers.
Genesis 48:5-6.
Now then, your 2 sons born to you in Egypt before I came to you here will be reckoned as mine. Ephraim and Manasseh will be mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are mine. Any children born to you after them will be yours.
Genesis 48, 8 through 11. When Israel saw the sons of Joseph, he asked,
Who are these?
They are the sons God has given me here.
Joseph said to his father. Then Israel said,
Bring them to me so I may bless them.
Israel said to Joseph,
I never expected to see your face again. And now God has allowed me to see your children too.
Genesis 48, 13 through 16. And Joseph took both of them, Ephraim on his right toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh on his left toward Israel's right hand, and brought them close to him. But Israel reached out his right hand and put it on Ephraim's head, though he was the younger, and crossing his arms he put his left hand on Manasseh's head. Then he blessed Joseph and said,
May the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has delivered me from all harm, may he bless these boys.
Genesis 48, 17 through 19. When Joseph saw his father placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, he was displeased. So he took hold of his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to him,
No, my father, this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head.
But his father refused and said,
I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will become great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become a group of nations.
Genesis 48:20. He blessed them that day and said,
In your name will Israel pronounce this blessing. May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh.
So he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Genesis 49, 1 through 2. Then Jacob called for his sons and said,
Gather around so I can tell you what will happen to you in days to come. Assemble and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to your father Israel.
Genesis 49, 3 through 4.
Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength, excelling in honor, excelling in power. Turbulent as the waters, you will no longer excel, for you went up onto your father's bed, onto my couch, and defiled it.
Genesis 49, 5 through 7.
Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their counsel. Cursed be their anger, so fierce, and their fury, so cruel. I will scatter them in Jacob and disperse them in Israel.
Genesis 49, 8 through 10.
Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. You are a lion's cub, Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion he crouches and lies down, like a lioness who dares to rouse him. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he, to whom it belongs, shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his.
Genesis 49, 13.
Zebulun will live by the seashore and become a haven for ships. His border will extend toward Sidon.
Genesis 49, 14 through 15.
Issachar is a raw-boned donkey lying down between two saddlebags. When he sees how good his resting place is, he will submit to forced labor.
Genesis 49, 16 through 17.
Dan will provide justice for his people. Dan will be a snake by the roadside, a viper along the path that bites the horse's heels so that its rider tumbles backward.
Genesis 49, 19.
Gad will be attacked by a band of raiders, but he will attack them at their heels.
Genesis 49, 20.
Asher's food will be rich. He will provide delicacies fit for a king.
Genesis 49, 21.
Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns.
Genesis 49, 22 through 24.
Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring, whose branches climb over a wall with bitterness. Archers attacked him. They shot at him with hostility, but his bow remained steady. His strong arms stayed limber because of the hand of the mighty one of Jacob. because of the shepherd, the rock of Israel.
Genesis 49:25 through 26.
Because of your father's God, who helps you, blessings of the heavens above, blessings of the deep that lies below. May these rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince among his brothers.
Genesis 49:27.
Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey. In the evening he divides the plunder.
Genesis 49:28 through 33. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. When Jacob had finished giving instructions to his sons, he drew his feet up into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Genesis 51. Joseph threw himself on his father and wept over him and kissed him. Genesis 50:12 through 15. So Jacob's sons did as he had commanded them. They carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, which Abraham had bought along with the field as a burial place from Ephron the Hittite. After burying his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, together with his brothers and all the others who had gone with him to bury his father. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said,
What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him?
Genesis 50:18 through 23. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him.
We are your slaves,
they said. But Joseph said to them,
Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children.
And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. Joseph stayed in Egypt, along with all his father's family. He lived 110 years and saw the third generation of Ephraim's children. Also the children of Machir son of Manasseh were placed at birth on Joseph's knees. Genesis 50:24 through 26. Then Joseph said to his brothers,
I am about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of this land to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
And Joseph made the Israelites swear an oath and said,
God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up from this place.
So Joseph died at the age of 110, and after they embalmed him, he was placed in a coffin in Egypt.